I will call this committee of the whole meeting to order. It's my duty to let you know at 6:30 p.m. we did have an executive session for the purpose of discussing legal and personnel issues. Would you please join me in saluting the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a roll call, Mrs. Leisure.
Yes. Mrs. Elder? Here. Mr. Hauser?
Here.
Mrs. Koza? Here. Dr. Waffen? Here. Mrs. Haynes?
Here.
Mr. Mueller?
Here.
Mr. Music?
Here.
Mr. Palmer?
Here.
And Dr. Search?
Present.
Thank you, Mrs. Leisure. Solicitors report, Mr. Nagel.
Yes, there's two items on the agenda. Next week, we'll make reappointment of John Fisher, our president, for a 5-year period, ending 12/31/18. And the board is currently discussing a replacement for our friend, Mr. McGuire, who recently passed away. If I could take just one moment before we move on. Don McGuire was a good friend of all of us. He was a hardworking and very dedicated man to both the school authority and the school district. He was the treasurer of the Greater Latrobe School Authority. And for those of you who don't know, in the audience, the school authority is a separate group from the school district who actually owns and signs off on all of the construction projects. Don served our school authority with distinction for many years. He served as our treasurer, during which projects totaling close to $75 million, including senior high, junior high, and a number of the elementary schools, were completed. He's a hardworking family man, and he was a true gentleman and a gentleman. And as I'm always finding out, so many men who are quiet and self-effacing and humble. He, of course, was a Marine, served our country, was a honorable and brave man. He and I used to keep track. We both wore Swiss Army watches, and we used to keep track of whose battery was going to go the longest. And I used to be replacing my batteries, and Don's watch battery never ran out. So I'm going to think of my memories of him like the watch battery that just never stopped. He was a wonderful member, a beautiful family, and for all of us on the school authority, we really miss him, and we really thank him for his service to the district. And that's the end.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Student activities and recreation, Dr. Waffen.
Okay, first off, we have Ms. Razzo and her student.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I have a small presentation today to honor and recognize Brianna Hoffert. Actually, Jessica's going to pull it up. In October, like all of the buildings in the district, we celebrated Red Ribbon Week. Say that more quickly. And we do this every year. And you will see in the picture when it comes up, actually, Brianna, they're in the same outfit. This is her Red Ribbon Week outfit. Her mother made those jeans. She was very spirited throughout the whole week. Obviously, what we do is we unite together as a building against drugs and alcohol. And we do have theme days. We had Crazy Sock Day, and we had Wear Red Day. We had School Spirit Day, where everybody was in orange and black, and the kids got very creative with it. And what we did is we kind of made it a contest. So the class decided who was the most spirited in their classroom that day. And they got to come down and get their picture taken with the Wildcat, who was also dressed for that Spirit Day. And Brianna, how many times did you win that week? Two times. For her red jeans and I think crazy socks, right? She's up there, over there on the left somewhere, huh? Yeah, with your black and white socks. Yeah, she had the best socks on. They were great. It was a great outfit. But it was a building-wide program that we did. And I was impressed with how everyone dressed up for each of the days and was so spirited. It was, even in 5th and 6th grade, which sometimes I understand kind of it fades off a little bit, but they were even very involved this year. Brianna went to the next level though. There was a contest that her mother came across, and it was through, and I want to make sure I say it correctly, National Family Partnership, which works with the DEA and the Department of Justice. And it was a competition to work with your family and decorate your door with the theme of a healthy me is drug-free. Well, Brianna found out that she could potentially win an iPad for herself, but it also gave the school, if she won, a $1,000 drug prevention grant. So Brianna and her mom, was your grandma, right? Your grandmother, decorated their door, having a lot of discussion about being drug-free and where you can go if you remain drug-free, and just the possibilities that you have of being healthy. So Brianna's mom, Janet, who is also with us, brought the link to the school district, and we promoted it through social media. Facebook, Twitter, our website, emails. Anybody we could find to vote would vote. This is a national competition. So there were 10 regions, and I think probably about 10 kids in each region. There were over 85,000 votes that were submitted in each of the 10 regions, and there was one winner from each region. So good. It wasn't until December 6th. Now, Janet had this information in November, and she wasn't allowed to tell Brianna that she won. But she did contact me and said, we need to make a big to-do about this. Everyone's coming, the DEA, this is a big deal. So that's Brianna's face. Brianna, was that right when I started doing the announcement? Did you kind of have an idea of maybe what?
When you said healthy me,
And then we taped Brianna winning. So we actually have that so that you can all see it. I love her reaction. It's the best. Her mother's actually taping this. She was kind of standing outside.
In October, we celebrated Red Ribbon Week here at BES. We celebrated being drug and alcohol free by being very spirited and participating in our daily team day. We wore red, put our clothes on backwards, wore funny hats and team jerseys. We even signed pledges to remain drug free. But there was a student in our building that took her spirit one step further and decorated her door at home with the theme, "A healthy me is drug free." And then entered a photo of her door into a contest on the website, redribbon.org. She didn't just enter the contest because she could win something for herself. She entered it because she could also win money from BES if she was chosen as the winner. People had to vote online for the most spirited door. Our personal friend Rebecca had ways to find out who won. Well, Mrs. Rosa, can you do me a favor? Can you make sure all the students in your classroom are listening very closely to my announcement? Because guess what? Brianna Hoffer, you.
So not only did Brianna win her iPad, but she also won for her school the $1,000 drug prevention grant. The day of our first grade holiday concert, we had a gentleman come from the DEA to present us with the big check in front of the whole school, And you can see her parents are there, and her teacher is Mrs. Rosa, who was also very supportive of. You can see his DEA code, huh? So we want to thank Brianna because we are so excited on what we can do next year with Red Ribbon Week. The possibilities are just endless. So we're very excited, and we want to thank you very, very much for all the hard work you and your parents put into this so that the school could benefit. What was your favorite part? What did you like most about doing this?
Probably decorating with my family.
Why did you want to do it?
Because I wanted to help with $1,000 for our school and help us.
Well, thank you very much. So for Brianna, anybody have any questions for us?
What are you doing next year? Are you planning already?
You have to do those G's, like that's Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job.
Wonderful job.
I think one of the important lessons to be learned in this example is that we all know the dangers of drug and alcohol abuse. But I think what is so unique, and I give so much credit to Janet and Brian Hoffer, is it's not done by yourself. And I think that that is really the message that we want to send here, is that it was the collaboration and the partnership with the school, but her mom and dad really taking a lead role here. So Brianna, you get all the credit, but we also want to thank your mom and dad and your grandmother and everyone else. So thank you very much.
Thank you again. That's a very nice way to start a meeting.
Also listed then are the senior nights, with the first one being wrestling tomorrow night at 6:30. And girls basketball, swimming, boys basketball, and hockey is listed. Includes my student activity report.
Thank you, and I think you're next with the legislative report.
The only thing I want to bring up is there is a House Bill 1734. The athletic departments now have extensive, expensive, mandated requirements now, including things like how much the boosters give and when we had teams, when they started, even if they no longer exist, when we took them out of existence, just a lot of things that are taking a lot of hours and a lot of expense. And the House Bill 1734 is to try to eliminate some of the things that aren't necessarily important to be taking up our athletic director's time to provide this with information. So I hope that if you do know representatives, that you call them to tell them to support House Bill 1734. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walker. Education and planning will begin with the students, Adam and Kate.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to say it's kind of weird not being the youngest person to speak. And also that she's better at speaking than I am. But anyway, on that note, last Friday the high school ski club took their first trip of 2014. And the club always offers reduced rates on lift tickets, gear rentals, and even lessons to anybody who wants to go, and is open to any student in junior or senior high schools, which skiing is always an expensive thing, so I would like ski clubs. It's a lot cheaper than just going. The first trip had a pretty good turnout, and even though it was a little bit foggy up at Seven Springs, so the conditions were decent. And from now on, the club plans on going every other week for as long as Seven Springs is open.
Hello. It's once again time for student council to begin planning for the annual Polarpalooza. Last year, 40 teams and over 300 students attended this event, whether through volunteering to help staff or participating in the games themselves. There are also about 15 teacher volunteers who donated their time to help the night run smoothly, and we cannot thank them enough. It could not have happened without them. The activities range from everything from ping pong and cornhole to soccer and basketball, while video games and team spirit and appearance also accounted for points. A pre-event scavenger hunt was organized as another way for teams to get a leg up on the competition before the night of Polarpalooza itself. The second place team received a $60 Dina's gift card, and the first overall got loaded Pirates tickets. This year's Student Council is once again hoping for a large outpouring of interest from the student body. More prizes and games this year than last year are to be expected, and it should be a fun evening for all involved. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. There is an attachment from Mr. Paremka, the enrollment report, and do you have any comment about that, Mr. Paremka?
I do not have any comment on the enrollment report, but I do have one other thing I'd like to add if I could.
Go ahead.
Each year, the Department of Education and the Pennsylvania Association of Federal Program Coordinators puts on the Improving Schools Performance Conference. This year, the conference is being held at the end of January down at the Sheraton Station Square. I had 3 teachers approach me a little earlier in the school year, and they asked permission to apply to be presenters at the conference. What you'll find at this conference is it's a lot of school districts who are presenting best practices in terms of school improvement. So I told them I thought it was a wonderful idea to highlight some of the things that we do here at Greater Latrobe. Their proposal was accepted, and we do have 3 teachers who will be presenting here at the end of the month at that conference. Again, it's a statewide conference, so folks will be here from all over the state. They'll be presenting with teachers all over the state. Mrs. Ferlin, Mrs. Galobish, who's here with us tonight, she's in the back. She teaches kindergarten at LES, and Mrs. McLean, who teaches 3rd grade at Bagby Elementary, will be our 3 presenters. The title of their workshop is Team, all in capital letters, Team Approach to Creating Successful Schools, Tutoring, Enriching, Assessing, and Meeting. And basically what it talks about is our systematic approach in the elementary schools to improving student performance and achievement. It highlights the collaboration that exists between teachers, the data that's utilized in the process, and our response to intervention and instruction process that has boosted student achievement over the last 5, 6, 7 years, et cetera. So I'm very proud of them for the work that they've done on the proposal and their presentation. I know they met several times outside of school to hone their presentation, but I'm very excited and I can't wait to see them present at the conference. And Mrs. Galovish is here if you had any questions. I'm totally putting you on the spot, but I'm real excited for them. I think it's a tremendous honor for them to be selected and to be presenting at the state level.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the initiative.
Thank you. We're looking forward to.
I'm sure you are. That's a wonderful opportunity. Does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Blow? Thank you again. Please thank your team members for us.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you. Educational programs, Dr. Tebber.
Yes, next Monday, we will have an Activity Day, Professional Development Day for our teachers, where we will continue our curriculum mapping process that we kicked off at the beginning of the year, and working on not just the curriculum mapping, but the alignment with PA4, as well as discussing the forming the common assessment component with that. During that time, there will be a lot of discussions pertaining to curriculum. And at next month's board meeting, there will be teacher leaders coming to present requests for maybe some course changes, modifications, and/or additions.
Thank you. Item D, because of the snow day or the cold day, I guess we need to change the school calendar. We're taking President's Day and making it February 17th and making it a day of instruction. We need to vote on that, or?
No, it's already stated in the calendar that it's the first snow makeup day, so it's more informational to know that we will have school that day on the 17th of February.
Thank you. Item E, it will be on your agenda next week to approve 2 tuition students. Both of them have moved outside the district. One is going to pay tuition, the other one will do online courses from Latrobe. So those will be on your agenda. Pardon me?
She's also paying tuition as well.
Yes.
Oh, yes, she needs to pay tuition also to take those courses. I didn't do that. Thank you. And item F is to approve a purchase of service agreement between Adelphi Village and GLSD, and there is an attachment explaining that. And also G is to approve a business associate agreement between Adelphi Village Incorporated and GLSD. Both of those will be agenda items for next week. The next curriculum committee meeting will be held next next Tuesday, the 21st, at 5:30 prior to our regular meeting. And I'll turn it over to Mrs.
Mrs. Golden, as you're all aware, every month almost, the board approves grants that we receive. And the board always acknowledges the wonderful groups that support Greater Latrobe. And so Mrs. Golden, who coordinates and handles all of that, I asked her if she could update the board on what those grants are used for. We acknowledge them and we certainly are very thankful for them, but I think it's very interesting for all of us to think about and recognize what those grants support within the school district, some for many, many years. So Mrs. Golden has put together a little presentation, and I know that she will answer any questions as we move through this.
Thank you, and really the purpose of this evening is to highlight specifically some programs that we've accepted at the board level for many years, and to offer you a little bit more detail of what actually those dollars accomplish in the district. So hopefully in years to come, this report might change and look a little bit different, but so it's sort of our main purpose is to really, I'm talking about some key community partnerships, and I sort of have to say at the beginning, in no way can my time here tonight explain all the generosity that the school district receives. I see PTO officers here. I know what the administrators do with school fundraising events. There's just so much to tell. So tonight I just want to focus specifically on some grants that have been long-standing in the district. And those being from a local foundation, the McFeely-Rogers Foundation. McFeely-Rogers was formed in 1953, and if you haven't had an opportunity, there is a display case right at the end of the Fine Arts wing before you're entering the auditorium lobby that a portion of the display talks about the history of the foundation. So it's a long-standing part of the community, and these I'm going to talk about in more detail. So you can see these are numerous programs, but when we talk about cultural enrichment or things like that, what does that actually look like? So hopefully I can offer a little bit more insight to those of you that might be new to the board, or some of you to see how those programs have changed, because they have changed over the years. These are going to highlight these two particular grants. They support student scholarships, the first being to the Foundation for Free Enterprise Week. This is for our senior high students. And then the second for junior high students to attend a summer science and math. It's sort of a STEM camp. And I'll talk about them in more detail. But historically, these grants were given directly to the district. And now with the creation of the Greater Latrobe Partners in Education Foundation, the foundation is receiving and administering those grants. So I just want to highlight those to you, and that there's hopefully over time the foundation may become sort of the manager, the administrator of these grant funds. But knowing that ultimately their purpose or their intent is honored, it's just maybe it may come into the district a little differently. So it's something to be aware of. These are just 3 programs, and I'm sure there are probably more. These are ones that I'm particularly aware of, that McFeely-Rogers supports other organizations like the YWCA of Westmoreland County for our before and after school care programs in 2 of our elementary schools. The Learning for Life program that I believe is in our elementary up to our junior high age of students, and then the Big Brothers, Big Sisters mentoring program. So while these aren't grants that you see on the board agenda per se, these are definitely impacting the lives of our students. These are just some recent grants, and again, this is not a comprehensive listing, but again, to note the Capstone Fund that historically was held and administered by the Latrobe Foundation, separate foundation, and recently the Catherine Davis McKenna Foundation issued the grant to the Greater Latrobe Partners in Education Foundation. So we're very excited for the renewal of that grant, and Mrs. Logan is working with Rotary
on some ideas to expand the capstone programming in their projects. And we're underway for programming the Kindergarten Earth Day and all those kinds of things that Latrobe Rotary supported. The kindergarten transition team, you just recently accepted a grant from Latrobe Rotary in support of that program, but that's a long-standing program that's been supported by the United Way. And also on your board agenda, you're accepting 2 grants this evening, and they are EITC grants, and that stands for it's a state program that stands for Educational Improvement Tax Credit. It's where a business or corporation can apply to the state to receive up to 90% reduction on their taxes. So this is something that, this is a program we've been a recipient of for many years, but now the Education Foundation is able to accept these dollars directly. The grants you're accepting this evening, it's sort of a pass-through, and it says the Pittsburgh Foundation, but as many of you know, the Community Foundation of Westmoreland County merged with the Pittsburgh Foundation, so the Pittsburgh Foundation administers the dollars. So you're accepting 2 wonderful grants, but this is something the foundation, the New Education Foundation, is looking to expand and grow and to really let people know about it. It's really a win-win where someone can give back to the school district and also get a significant reduction on their taxes. And I'll just note, in previous years we received from Katrina Rafferty that purchased some curriculum kits for our kindergarten team. So in talking about development and advancement in the district, I just wanted to pause and to recognize the Art Conservation Trust that was formed in 1991. And here is just some highlights of the numerous accomplishments that they've had in the district. And most recently, Mrs. Barbara Nichols presented an update or sort of a wrap-up of the Preserve the Vision campaign. And to note, the McFeely-Rogers Foundation was a major contributor to that effort. And I think I listed that at the beginning of a recent grant. And again, that's a grant that would have been made to the Art Conservation Trust. And something to note that's new, and if you haven't seen it, again, if you're going up to look at the display about Fred Rogers and reading about the McFeely-Rogers Foundation, if you keep going into the lobby, there are 2 memorial plaques. And it's a way for people to recognize a friend of Greater Latrobe School District, whether they're a graduate or not. And all gifts received are dedicated to the Art Trust Endowment. So it's a very nice program that was started by classmates in 1958. So talking a little bit about current initiatives for the Greater Latrobe Partners in Education Foundation, it's over a year old. And these highlight some early successes, first being that hopefully you're all well aware of the A+ campaign. If you remember last spring, the foundation presented a $226,000 grant to the district. Those dollars were used to fully equip our junior high school with interactive whiteboards and student response systems. So it was a tremendous, tremendous accomplishment. The work was done over the summer. Our teachers have had training on this, and it's been, there was a great need at the junior high, and through that partnership with the foundation, we were able to accomplish that in a timely manner. So the campaign continues. It's an opportunity for parents, community members, alumni to give back to the school district, and our additional goals are assisting with the athletic wellness complex, as well as arts initiatives and renovations at the junior high. The next 2 bullets, the Myron Pete DeGenis Scholarship and the Joey Dado Memorial Scholarship, these are 2 funds that were previously held at the Latrobe Foundation. And when they have donors interested in creating an endowed fund, we currently, within the school district structure, didn't have the ability to administer or to hold an endowed fund. The restrictions on how school district dollars are invested and allocated. So the Latrobe Foundation set up and sort of held those dollars. And now with the New Education Foundation, we've moved those funds over. They have the same guidelines and the same purpose, but it is, again, another example, I think, of what an education foundation does for the school district, because it gives it allows new opportunities for people to say, you know what, I could do this, I could do a gift of a stock or security and give that to the school district. And previously we didn't have that ability. And the third being the Stavitsky Fund, which was contributions made in honor of Bill Stavitsky's retirement, his years of service, and those grants continue. We give up to $2,000 a year for innovative teaching grants. These are future goals or initiatives that the foundation is working towards. Number one being creative, comprehensive alumni directory. And I have one here this evening. If any of you know anything about the Altoona Area High School, they've actually had an education foundation since the 70s. So they've done many, many editions of an alumni directory. And it's a purely voluntary process, but we believe it is something that would be a great resource for the community. And we want to put a call out to our reunion contacts, because through sharing of lists that in Altoona, I know when someone's planning a reunion, they contact the foundation office and they help those reunion organizers, because there are ways to find people that maybe, I know Facebook's great, but it's certainly not the end-all be-all for finding people in a class. So this is one that is a little bit time-consuming, so we definitely need people's support, and I encourage, if through contacting the foundation's website, you can add your name and send a message to us if you're a reunion contact. And I think that dovetails into the social media online network. We know we have many graduates close to us, but many have moved away, so we want to expand our reach with alumni. And as well as educating the community about what an education foundation is. This is a new concept, and we know we continually need to share a message of what we want to accomplish, because every foundation is unique to the school district, and that's certainly the case here. And the foundation is currently working on initiatives or goals that could be accomplished within a 1 year, which many of you have heard of an annual fund. So these are things that we can say, with your support, we can accomplish X in the next school year. So we're looking on identifying these goals, and that is something that will be done in concert with teachers, administrators, parents, and really the board as well in identifying these goals. So I just want to pause, and I mentioned the McFeely-Rogers Foundation, but I have a document that shows a history of grants to the school district, and the first being in March of 1974. So here we are in 2014, and the first grant was in support of the book that many of you may know, The Latrobe Area Community, Always Changing, Always the Same. So, and I believe the second grant was in support of resurfacing the track at Memorial Stadium. And then I think the third was a 4-piece neck machine. It was a type of equipment, PE equipment. So there's always been a tradition of supporting the 3As with the McFeely-Rogers Foundation. And I have to note that through this 40 years of partnership, there has been nearly 170 individual grants to the school district, and the amount that's well over $1 million. So it's really, truly a tremendous investment that they have made in the school district, and one that I know that we are all so grateful for. So these next series of slides are talking about some of the programs that they've supported annually. The first being what we call GLASS, which is the Grow to Latrobe Arts Series. So next week, if you were to come to the Center for Student Creativity, you would see our third graders here for a day-long art symposium where we will have visiting artists and stations. And what I like that's kind of fun about this day is that we invite students at the same day from the 3 elementary schools, and we kind of mix them around. And so it's an opportunity for them to meet new friends in the district, and they really enjoy the opportunity. And it's one that we often have themes, and the artists are always so impressed with our students. So at the elementary level, it's the art symposium, but as we move into our secondary, it looks more in the way of artists in residencies, professional artists working directly with students, and supporting field trips. The cultural enrichment program, and I believe that this is one of the longest standing programs in terms of cultural enrichment that the foundation, the McFeely-Rogers Foundation, has supported. And I believe the beginnings was Dr. Gene Leonard wanted to, he wanted elementary assemblies to be more than magic shows. And so he really started talking with the McFeely-Rogers Foundation and the PTOs, and they decided to do a matching grant program. So McFeely-Rogers gives a grant and the PTOs match it to ensure that the quality is there for our cultural program. So if you were in the buildings today and also tomorrow, the Pittsburgh CLO would be doing a musical on Thomas Edison. So it supports programs like that that are truly more than just, again, the magic shows. Or, believe me, I get lots of literature on elementary assemblies, and they are not all created equal. So we try to focus on quality versus quantity for these programs. There we go. Culture across the curriculum, and this is one that could be confusing because by and large, culture across the curriculum supports a program called Art to Wear. And this is something that I have seen in my years at the district has transitioned. It used to involve students working intensively with a fabric artist going to Pittsburgh, and now that has changed where the artist from Pittsburgh comes to us and works with our family and consumer science staff as well as our fine arts teacher, and then the result is students creating an original piece of clothing. And you can imagine that students are really, really engaged in this process. It's actually one where students need to apply into the program because it is a very serious process and they need to devote a lot of time to it. And the end result, and I think at your place, you should have an invitation to the Art to Wear fashion show at Latrobe Art Center. I encourage you all to come. It's a really wonderful event and the student creations are wonderful, but you also get to learn more about these young people, and I think that's really one of the highlights. This is a program that supports, I think this is an offshoot of the elementary cultural enrichment program where we're able to bring in guest speakers, performances at our junior and senior high level. These are things where we might have the IUP brass band. Here we're in the amphitheater and we have a poet doing a reading to our English students here at the senior high school. And this is one that is near and dear to me because many of the activities we coordinate here in the CSC. This is a newer program. I have a sort of a generic name, musical initiatives, but this is one that was sparked by students having a desire to play a musical instrument, but and maybe they're not able to purchase it, but they're also not able to get approved through the credit rating to rent the instrument. So you can imagine how disappointing that would be for a young student because, or maybe even a family doesn't even opt into the program because they think, you know what, we're not going to be able to qualify for this. So McFeely-Rogers Foundation has supported us in recent years for the purchase of instruments that we can lend to those students that can stay with the student, because what we want is we want a 6th grader to make that 7th grade leap into the music program and then again make the 10th grade leap and stay with the program. And it's been very successful, and an offshoot again has been that we've been able to accept donated instruments and use those grant dollars to have them serviced so that they're playable. So here, there's a photo of the Slazak family donating an instrument, but just recently received a donation from a young man. He's just out of college, and he saw Mr. Jordan at a concert, and he said, I just bought a trumpet, I have a job now, and the music department at Greater Latrobe meant so much to me, and I want another student to be able to play an instrument. So he brought a brand new trumpet and donated it to the school so that someone could play. So I know the elementary music teachers, instrument teachers are making great use of this, and then we're even seeing the needs in the junior and senior high. So this is something, I think you've seen we put out a call for donated instruments, but or even donations that supports servicing donated instruments as well are greatly appreciated. So again, this is really a prime example of how their grant, the McFeely-Rogers grant, has leveraged other gifts to the district. This is a program that is really, maybe I would say a quieter program, but it supports programs for our learning support department. They attend field trips and supports various supplies for the department. And these are some scholarships. That's Haley Simpson last year attending a 2-day workshop at the Latrobe Art Center. They bring in nationally recognized artists, and it's a terrific opportunity. If you have a young person that's developing a portfolio, they might leave a workshop with 3 to 4 works of art, and it really, we hear favorable responses about this program. This is one I know Kara Stanger has talked to you about this with her initiative starting at Bagley, but it has spread to purchase equipment at LES as well as Mountain View, but McFeely-Rogers Foundation has helped us accomplish our goals. And there you see a photo of the sensory room at Bagley. If you haven't had an opportunity to see that space, it's truly wonderful. And these I mentioned earlier, these are the scholarships that are now being administered through the New Education Foundation. And these are, students apply, we have 3 spots, but this is, again, a very, very successful program. We have rave reviews. And the STEM experience at UPG, which supports 10 to 12 students. These are junior high students. And I just wanted to highlight, I feel like I can't mention some things and leave a few things out, but these are other really strong community partners of Chamber of Commerce. If you're here tomorrow morning, we're doing a directions training program or the career fair. We have wonderful communications with our business community, and the Chamber helps that. And I also believe tomorrow is another graduation of the Young Engineers program, and that photo to your right is Mrs. Pompilio put a call out to her former graduates from the Young Engineers program and said, and this is after school, and she said, you know, if you guys can come back and share your experiences in college with current students. And again, I think she thought she might get 4 students. I think they all came back. So we didn't have enough room to fit all of them. And it was really, Mrs. Pompilio said, I can say this to them till I'm blue in the face, but when, you know, their friend says, don't join a fraternity if you want to be an engineer, it really resonates, I think, with them. And she said she was very glad someone said that. And I have to mention, the Kennemental Foundation has also been very generous with grants to support our A+ campaign. And these are other wonderful programs made possible with that Latrobe Rotary, the new Jack B. Townsend Environmental Classroom. You have a young person planting a tree, the Kindergarten Earth Day, which we're planning, the Fishing Derby in the spring. So these are all just a few of the recent projects that the Rotary has supported the district on, and I noticed that I missed the 3rd grade dictionaries that they hand out every year. There's so many things that they support, and so this list can't include them all. And here are just, I have to say that there are so many activities that go on in the district for the betterment of our school community, and you can see the wonderful banners that our student council has installed around the campus. LES did a fundraiser where I believe, and Mrs. Holler can correct me, they had pajamas donated, and then Scholastic gave them books for the pajamas, and the pajamas went to children in need. There's just so many great things that go on. This is a picture from the senior high lip dub that Mrs. Halk and her students do every day, and often some of these things, there's a return to the district that really it's hard to quantify. So with that, I know I maybe was rambling a little bit, but it is truly a pleasure, and I stand here before you, but all the people behind me and all of you really make all of these grants possible and advancing the district forward. So thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Golden? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Golden. I believe that ends my report, and I will turn it over to Mrs. Elder for finance.
Yes, next week on our agenda, we will have the treasurer's report, the bills and the budgetary transfers, the information about the mileage rate for 2014. And we will have now Mr. Weston ready to come.
introduce Matt Horner and Barb Terrett from Horner Wisely Terrett. They're our local auditors. They're here to present the June 30, 2013 local audit report to the school board. So come on up.
Good evening. It's pretty hard to follow Mrs. Golden. Okay, I assume you have your audit reports on your screens there. If you go to page 2 of your report, actually, I'm sorry, it's page 3, which is your independent auditor's report. This is the report that outlines your responsibility versus our responsibility under the audit. And this is an unqualified opinion, which is a clean opinion, as some would say. So, which means that we didn't have to make any modifications for your financial statements to be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. If you go to page 16, page 16 is your balance sheet, and this is your governmental funds. So it's your general fund, your athletic fund, your capital projects. You can see that your total fund balances, your total fund balance under your general fund is $4.5 million. Of that, $3.4 million is unassigned, which means that it's basically what is available to meet current needs. On page 18, your change in net assets, or your change in fund balance was $376,000. You had a $376,000 decrease. And we have a budget to actual. If you go back to page, sorry, it's not that far. Sorry, I lost it. Page 20, sorry. Okay, if you go to page 20, which would, you can see that this is your budget to actual. It shows your original versus final budget versus your actual. And you can see that on your revenues, you actually had a positive budget to actual of $865,000, which means that you actually received $865,000 more in revenues than what you had anticipated. And then in expenditures, you actually had $265,000 less than anticipated. So in total for operations, you had a $1.1 million positive budget effect. And then if you go back to the back of the report, for the summary of your single audit is your audit of your federal expenditures. And if you go back to page 63, this is a summary of our auditor's results. At the financial statement level, we issued the unqualified opinion that we talked about. We indicated no internal control findings, no non-compliance with laws and regulations, and the same at the federal level. So on your federal programs, we have to do a pretty intense audit of your federal programs. The Title I audit in itself is not fun. But luckily we don't have to do that one every year. But we did not report any findings from an internal control or a compliance standpoint. So that's very good. Any questions?
If anybody does have any questions, I know you're all rushing to read this tonight. Please don't hesitate to call me or email me over the next several days, and I will get back to you with an answer prior to the vote at next Tuesday's meeting.
And the same with us too. Our numbers are on there. We're always glad to take questions.
That's what we're here for. Okay?
And if I might add, just because I found it interesting how it kind of ties into Jessica's presentation. The one page where Barb mentioned the surplus in revenue and then the shortfall in under the expenditures, we received that grant from the foundation for about $225,000, which allowed us to underspend a budget line item on the expenditure side by that $225,000. So, those types of partnerships that we have with the foundation are obviously reflected in our financial statements, which is a really neat thing. So, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our approval of the audit will be on next week's agenda. And Mr. Watson, are you ready to present the budget?
I know it seemed like a long night, so I will try to keep this brief as possible. Please don't hesitate to ask me any questions throughout this process. Hopefully it will generate some sort of dialogue. Well, the reason we were looking at the budget right now so early in the school year is because of Act 1, and we've talked about that before. Act 1 has sort of accelerated the budget development process. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of points regarding Act 1 that we've talked about many, many times here and many more times at our Finance Committee meetings. But Act 1 is an index that is driven by the statewide average weekly wage and employee cost index. So basically what I'm trying to state there is Act 1 provides an index which the school district is expected to operate within unless we apply for exceptions or go to a voter referendum. And that index, as I stated, is driven by the statewide average weekly wage and employees cost index, which is driven by the economy. So as the economy goes, the index level fluctuates. The 2014-15 school year index is 2.7%. When you sort of do the math, basically what that means is the school district or the school board has the ability to increase the millage rate by 2.08 mils without applying for any exceptions or without going to a voter referendum. That 2.08 mils would generate an additional $696,000 in real estate tax revenue for the school district. Right now, again, the reason we're reviewing this is we have to do one of two things. We either have to adopt a resolution by June 30th stating that we will operate within the index, which means we will not apply for any exceptions, we will not seek a voter referendum, and it means that we do not have to adopt a formal preliminary budget by February 19th. Or we can go the other route and we can adopt a preliminary budget by February 19th, which would allow us to apply for those exceptions and do a voter referendum, which means that we would have the ability to tax above that 2.08 mils. Again, just the Act 1, a little bit about the history. You can see back in 2009-10, the base index was 4.1%. Over the next several years, it slowly declined to a low of 1.4%. It has now begun to increase back up to 2.1%. There's an adjusted index. If your market value personal income aid ratio is above 0.5, there's a formula they calculate out, and any district that has a market value personal income aid ratio above 0.5 gets an adjusted amount. So with the adjustment, you can see it was at 5.1% in 9-10, decreased to about 1.8%, and now we are at 2.7% is what I shared with you in the last slide. That means we have the ability again to tax up to 2.08 mils if needed. Okay, some of the budgetary unknowns right now, state and federal funding. Obviously that information has not been released, so it is unknown. For this purpose, for the purpose of this sort of analysis, I've assumed level funding for both the state and federal governments. Healthcare, I've projected 7.5% increase. We've tracked historically, our high mark trend has been around 10% per year. We've had very good claims experience the last several years. I would anticipate it coming in hopefully well under the 7.5%. Keep in mind, every 1% adjustment is about $40,000. So if it comes in 2% lower than that, that's $80,000 we're able to reduce our preliminary budget amount by. So I believe that 7.5% is a high amount. I haven't said it yet, but this preliminary budget is very conservative. On the revenue sides, I've projected low, and on the expenditure sides, I've built in some additional, cost estimates just because I want to be conservative at this point in time. Special education, we used our current AEMs, and basically what I mean by that is we've looked at our current special ed enrollment, and we've assumed basically the same type of student. We all recognize if we have 1 or 2 students with a certain need that move into the school district, that can be, have some serious impacts to your budget. Retirements, we've assumed no retirements. We've offered, in the last year, we offered an early retirement incentive. It's not, we've had no discussion amongst the board whether or not we're going to do that or not again. We have a relatively young staff, so I do not anticipate that being the direction the board would want to go at this point in time, but you never know. So I've assumed no retirements. In our student enrollment, I've assumed that to be flat as well. Our student enrollment has fluctuated about 4,150 kids for the last several years. So some districts are experiencing significant decline. We've been relatively level, which was a good thing. Okay, so just this slide is just a summary of the projected revenue changes. I did distribute I did not keep a copy for myself. Can I steal this from you soon? Thanks. The one-page handout I distributed, it basically provides a little bit more detail than what you have in front of you. There's a few things I wanted to note. So I'm anticipating, as far as revenue, an increase in local revenue of about $407,000. If you look at the page, the one-page handout that I distributed to you, the revenues are actually on the lower portion of it. You can see that a majority of our local revenue increases are in real estate and earned income tax. The county provides us a countywide assessment of all of our assessed value of all the properties in the school district every November. Ours has increased $1.5 million from last year, which shows there's been some development within our school district, which is great, and that's obviously a good sign. That $1.5 million equates to about $115,000 in additional revenue. Now that does not assume any millage increase, that's just through natural growth. The other local revenue budget line item that we experienced, or I've projected an increase in, is our earned income tax collection. We actually, from the 11-12 school year to the 12-13 school year, we experienced an increase of $500,000 in our earned income tax collection. The reason for that is under Act 32, which went into effect January 1, 2012, we had to elect a countywide tax collector, but more importantly, employers were required to withhold earned income tax from all of their employees. So maybe some of those individuals who have slipped through the cracks before are no longer doing that. So that generates additional revenue for the school district. Now, in talking with tax collectors, we don't anticipate that $500,000 to hold true. Okay, so I projected conservatively a $150,000 increase in that budget line item. I anticipate it being higher. But the reason we're not going to the full $500,000 is that was a transition year, 11-12 to 12-13. So you still had individuals filing under the old method where they just filed at the end of the year. So it just was slightly inflated. So I've conservatively projected about $150,000 increase there. You can see our delinquent real estate. I look at a 4-year trend whenever I'm developing a budget. I look at a 3, 4, and 5-year trend to try and get a feel. I believe that we can adjust that delinquent real estate tax collection slightly, so I've done that as well. Our investments, I've made the adjustment necessarily for that. We're getting about 0.45% return on investment, which isn't that great, but it is better than the 0.1 we were receiving several years ago, so that's a good thing. State revenue. We're looking at an $836,000 increase in our state funding, okay? Of that amount, $532,000 is a result of Peaser's retirement. And if you recall, we talked about this a lot last year. The employer contribution rate for retirement it has increased significantly, and I'll get to that in some other slides. But I just wanted to note, the state has an obligation to reimburse every school district 50% of those costs. So as our costs are going up, the state has to meet that obligation. Therefore, the allocation of the subsidy that we receive will continue to increase as well. And then the final piece is our federal. We have a slight adjustment of about $52,000 there. Last year under the sequestration, we lost about 8% federal funding, but I've made a slight adjustment because, as Mrs. Prumker will know, throughout the year you constantly get an adjusted amount for your Title I or your Title II funding. And what I had anticipated last year, our actual 12-13 federal funding to come in at, was adjusted slightly at the end of the year, so we got a little bit more, which is a good thing. But we still lost roughly 8% of that larger number. But there's an adjustment of $50,000 that I can sort of pump up our federal budget by. And so I just wanted to note that. I have a couple notes on here, and I just glossed over, and I wanted to revisit under the local. We've trended, we're looking at about a 1.3% increase in local revenue. We've trended over the last 5 years, not including millage increases, about 1.7%. So I just wanted to point that out because I mentioned my projections, I believe, are somewhat conservative. We'll continue to monitor those over the next several months, so I might be able to make some adjustments to our local revenue. Okay, so review of state and federal funding. And you'll probably recall this slide from last year as well, because the purpose of it is just to show that the level of state funding, yes, in state and federal funding, yes, it has increased, but it's increased mainly as a result of retirement. Okay, the Peaser's retirement and the state's obligation to reimburse the district 50% of that. If you look at the black columns, those are the state funding, including the retirement subsidy. The orange columns are the state funding after you've removed the retirement. So you can see state and federal funding has been relatively level, over the last several years. I actually did an analysis, and it showed that I'm projecting about a slightly under 2% increase in state funding, and that's not including retirement. Over the last 4 years, we've trended at about a 2.3% decrease. Okay, so you might ask, well, what's changed? Last year, after we adopted our budget, Corbett inserted more money for higher ed and for public education. Okay, so I've made the adjustment to reflect the additional money we anticipate getting in the 13-14 school year, which is about $250,000. So I included that in the 14-15 budget. So that's a good thing. Hopefully, we'll continue to see some growth in that basic ed. We all know that any additional funds we receive from the state for retirement will go to fund retirement. We're looking for those dollars that we can actually put into our education and into our students. Okay, so that was a summary of our revenue. I'm going to jump to a summary of our expenditures. We're looking at a projected increase of about $2 million in expenditures. The next piece speaks to the Peaser's retirement. It accounts for $1,064,000. So it accounts for roughly a little bit more than 50% of the overall increase. As noted on the previous slide, I want to note that I'm looking strictly at the expenditure budget line item right now. We do receive a 50% reimbursement, which was reflected on my previous slides as far as revenue adjustments. All of the other budgets make up the difference. If you flip back to that summary sheet that I provided you with, you can see we're projecting an increase in special education costs. And again, that's just because there's an uncertainty as to what type of student and what type of needs those students might have. So again, being conservative, I've bumped up that budget line item by a specific dollar amount. Audio visual, I've bumped that dollar amount up in case we want to continue to purchase the interactive boards that the foundation helped us purchase last year. I've made an adjustment to our technology budget as well. You can see there's an increase projected for salaries and then a slight increase projected for insurances. As you look at that summary sheet, I just wanted to note while I've projected a 7.5% increase in healthcare, you can see there's only about a $52,000 increase based on budget. And when I drill down into that a little bit more, we've had a group of individuals that have transitioned from our more rich plans into our less rich plans, which is helping to control those costs. So that's a good thing. We're offering a more variety of healthcare options for our employees that are helping to control our costs. It's giving them more options and more flexibility as far as to control their out-of-pocket costs as well. So I believe that to be a win-win. Just wanted to note the PSERS retirement impact. In 05-06, the employer contribution rate was 4.69%. You can see in the 14-15 school year now we are at 21.4%. So back in 05-06, that budgeted line item was $557,000. It is now $2,391,000. That's about a $1.8 million increase, or a 329% increase over that 9-year period. So it's just I think it's important to note that while it may appear that our budget is increasing, we're doing some things, I believe, strategically to help to control costs, to generate revenue, so that we are not as negatively impacted by that large increase as we might have been. I wanted to mention it a little bit, and I didn't, but that sort of ties into all of Jessica's presentation, if you think about it. You know, we've lost state funding. I shouldn't say lost, but it's sort of been flatlined over the last several years. We've lost federal dollars, but we've been successful in continuing to build those partnerships and relationships within our community that have generated, additional income, and that's a great thing. It's allowed us to continue to provide some of the services to our students that we feel are so beneficial. Next slide is just to show the black columns there show what our overall expenditures are when you include the retirement costs that we have. The orange columns show what our total expenditures are if you were to remove those retirement costs. So you can see there's a pretty significant difference. And over the last several years, any cost increase that we've had as far as expenses have gone, have for the most part gone to the retirement system. And then I believe this is almost my final slide here. Just wanted to remind everybody what PSERS retirement truly is. PSERS stands for Public School Employees Retirement System. It is a state law, went into effect July 18th, 1917. I noted some dates of 1983, 2001, 2011, where there were some changes that were made by the state to the retirement system that I believe sort of led us to the situation we're dealing with right now. I won't bore you with all the nitty-gritty details to that. I'd be happy to highlight this for you if you're interested at some other point in time. But there were some changes made to the retirement system in those years that I believe have had some negative impacts in years moving forward. But the other point I wanted to note is no local control. It's not subject to collective bargaining. We can't change it. It's a state law. We're obligated or required to follow it. It's not something that the school board is going to, change either. So you don't have the ability to make any adjustments there. So with all of that said, I've shared this in greater detail with the Finance Committee, which is made up of several board members sitting around here. Our recommendation is to adopt the resolution, operate within the index. We believe we'll be able to do that and be fine. So we'll continue to evaluate all the operating expenses, and we will continue to review potential revenue funding sources. Any questions? Dr. Sorge.
What is our fund balance?
Our fund balance, the amount or definition of what a fund balance is?
I know what the fund balance says. There's two ways of looking at it. What is the way that we can actually use?
We utilize, I strongly suggest that you utilize your fund balance for one-time, non-reoccurring costs. If you would decide to utilize a portion of your fund balance to balance your budget, that leads to long-term issues. That's one-time money. Once you spend it, it's gone. If you utilize it for reoccurring costs, for example, salaries, benefits, etc., those expenses are there year after year after year. That revenue is not. So if the board would choose to ever utilize a reserve, a fund balance reserve, I would strongly suggest you utilize it for a one-time capital purchase, something that you might buy 10 or 15 years. Did that answer your question? Is that where
How
you're
much is it?
Okay, our fund balance is about $3.5 million. I believe it was on page 16, and I didn't bring that up with me, but it is the, and again, I'm only speaking to the undesignated portion, because our fund balance is slightly larger than that, but there are funds that are designated for the healthcare consortium. A portion of that is designated for the Art Conservation Trust, and a portion of that is designated for our capital reserve fund, okay? We have about $2.3 million in the capital reserve fund that we will utilize to fund our 5-year rolling capital plan. Mr. Millslagle has a piece under his property and supply budget tonight of 2014 capital projects that he's proposing that we go out to bid for. That will have no impact on our budget. Okay, that has nothing to do with any of the numbers that I've presented to you today. We have money that we've set aside and we've designated specifically for those specific projects. Another piece, the state recommends a fund balance, an undesignated fund balance of around 8%. We're, I think, around 6% as of June 30th. 2013, but you have to remember in November we took a portion of that $3.5 million, $1 million of it, and we transferred it to the capital reserve fund. So if you would look at it today, we have about $2.5 million undesignated funds, reserve fund. Are there any other questions? I believe we're in a good financial position, by the way, just as far as the fund balance goes and our planning that we've done with the capital reserve fund, etc. So, okay, that's all I have. You know, I'm sorry, one thing I'm going to pass out is you noted our recommendation is to adopt a resolution. I have the formal resolution and how it reads that you will be asked to approve, and Mrs. Maines will be asked to sign next Tuesday. So I'm going to give each of you a hard copy of it, just so you have that and you can review it prior to the next meeting.
Will be on the agenda for approval next week. And finally, there are 2 gifts from the community partners that Mrs. Golden talked about earlier that will also be on our agenda for approval next week. And the Finance Committee meeting minutes are an attachment that you can look at, and the next Finance Committee meeting will be the first Wednesday of February at 10 a.m. at the admin offices. That concludes my report.
Did everybody get a copy of the resolution? Did you get it from Mr. Moore?
Yes, I did. I have some actors here.
I just wanted to make sure everybody got the letting count on me.
Thank you, Mrs. Elder, and we'll move to property and supply, Mrs. Kozer.
Yes, and I'd like to introduce Kurt Hammett for our budget update.
Good evening. As we head into the new year, there's a flurry of construction activity going on, which are 2 complexes and 2 buildings and fields. If you're a fan of smart phone apps, the WeatherBug app now has a live camera view of the field house and the football field. So it's another wonderful thing. My wife yelled at me for looking at the smartphone every night, you know, tracking the building and whatnot. There is some construction scheduling. You know, we're kind of beyond the new year. You know, we were hoping to get these buildings by the first of the year. Some things have pushed that back. Some issues that the project team has been tracking and aware of. Especially being this weather we've been having, this polar vortex. So we had minus 20 degree weather and then 60-degree weather 4 days later, has caused a real issue with your upper level field and some exterior amenities on the field house, one being the metal roof panels. Those 2 activities have been prolonged, but I don't foresee any issues as far as being completed here in the next month or so. We spoke a little bit last board meeting about the upper level field being nearly complete, except for the rubber infill. I will report that today they are back on site since the ground's kind of thawed out and installing that rubber infill. So given good weather conditions, there's probably about a week to 7 to 10 day period to get that completed. As far as other construction activities, a lot of it's interior finishes. You're looking at ceilings, flooring, painting, lockers are going in, accent paint are tracking throughout the building. So kind of home stretch as far as construction activity. I foresee no issues as far as getting contractors to get on board and the project team and getting the schedule to you guys and getting moved in and ready to go. I know we're all excited to do these buildings for spring sports. I don't foresee any issue on that. As far as the budget, we're on budget. There are some change orders I will request the board to approve the next board meeting. These are items that we've been tracking throughout the summer and the fall. There's nothing new. I've just finally gotten firm numbers from the contractors and went through the process of presenting to the Project Supply Committee meeting earlier this month, and then to you as well, my project update. There are 2 site-related ones, which are existing conditions, which we've upgraded to today's standards and took care of. One being existing storm line at the junior high school, which we relocated. Other ones is the front parking lot light that was damaged during construction, and also just lost my track of thought with the fourth one. Allegheny had the lighting, the 2 site.
The louver?
Yes, revision, design changes, location of louvers within the windows. So
and they are all change orders that we've talked about for several months with you. We finally have numbers that we can bring for approval. It's taken a while to negotiate the numbers to the point that we agree with them.
And they're all less than what you initially.
Yes. That's why it's taken a while.
Right.
So I did mention, scheduling issues as far as weather and also some contractor issues that we're dealing with, but we are aware of it. We are working on it. So the goal is not just undermine quality of the product for the schedule, but we are foreseeing that we'll have definitely buildings and fields ready for the district come spring sport time. With that, another news as far as schedule and project. I know Hank wants us to talk about the junior high.
Right, to update you on the junior high piece, we're coming in the home stretch with the construction documents. Will be finished January 31st as scheduled. The plan now is to go out to bid and advertise 4 bids February 2nd, February 10th, and February 17th. We would award bids, or open bids, on February 27th, and then hopefully award at your first meeting in March, the meeting on the 11th. So we're going to have to advertise that as an action.
That'll be an agenda item if they're going to get a hold.
Other than that, I have nothing else. Questions? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
It seems like everybody in the room had a presentation.
Yeah, where's your power? Okay, part B, next week we'll ask for permission to advertise for bids for the weight room equipment for the athletic and wellness project, and also the capital projects for 2014, which are projects that Property and Supply has seen. Actually, we've been talking about these for a year.
Some of them, yep.
Yeah, to prioritize them and decide, yes, these are the ones that we can spend some of that designated capital projects on. It will have no impact on the budget because it's already out there. So that will be an agenda item. You can see our Property and Supply Committee meeting minutes as an attachment, and our next Property and Supply meeting will be at 3:30 on February 6th at the Senate Building. And that completes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Kozar. We will move to community relations. Dr. Zorch.
With attachment on the Latrobe Community Parks and Recreation Commission meeting minutes. And we're going to ask to reappoint Susan Mays to the Latrobe Community Parks and Recreation Commission for a 3-year term ending 12/31/2016. You still want that? I'm guessing since your name is on here. Okay, good. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. George. The Westmoreland Intermediate Unit, again, every year you're asked to elect WIU board members, and you'll be getting that information as soon as you know. And on the agenda for next week will be participation in the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit Consortium for fuel immediate. That's a year. Anything there? No? Okay, we'll move back to Mrs. Kozar for the EWCTC Joint Operating Committee.
No report, our meetings at the end of the month.
Okay, thank you.
For next week.
Board Policy PSD Liaison, Mrs. O.
Yes, we will have the second reading to adopt the 2 new revisions to board policies 222 and 323 regarding tobacco use. That's all.
Thank you.
Well, we talked a little bit, I should say, we talked a little bit at the technology committee meeting about not liking the new format of the PSBA daily drumming. I don't know how the rest of you feel about it, but what happens every day is they give you a list of newspaper articles from around the state, basically, that you can check. And actually, they could do that without writing the whole thing up. They could just send you, get this, and you read the newspaper articles. So I don't like it, and I find it very sort of a waste of time. Somebody at the technology committee meeting said maybe it would be better if they did it once a week or something like that and gave you the list of articles. Quite frankly, if I read the Trib on Sunday, I often have seen the articles that I'm asked to look up on Monday and Tuesday, and I don't like it. So if you don't mind, I'll let PSBA know that we're not thrilled, if that's okay with all of you.
Please do.
Do I hear any nays? That's NAY. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Elder. Transportation, Mr. Music.
Thank you. The 29th at 3:30 at the City Hall.
Thank you. Technology, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Madam President. We had our technology meeting this evening at 6 o'clock. The meeting minutes will be attached to next week's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent's recommendations, Mrs. Swider.
Next week, the administration would ask that the board accept a resignation from Randy Shine, who is a classroom assistant at Bagley, who has accepted a full-time teaching position at a different district, as well as a replacement for that position, Robin Watson, to replace the Bagley classroom assistant position, as well as a personal care assistant for the artistic support at the junior high school, Benita Spiller, as well as 3 weight room supervisors that are interim at this point, Robert Jury, Jeffrey Duda, and John Milsicki. I apologize if I butchered his name. We would also ask that the board approve several substitute teachers as a school counselor and as an elementary person. In addition, Breakfast of Champions is this Thursday, and our regular meeting will be next Tuesday on January 21st. Just 2 notes. Mrs. Golden referenced the Penn Middle Graduation Young Engineers Program tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock at Penn Middle at their main headquarters. All of you are welcome to attend if you're interested. It's a very nice event. As well as on January 22nd, the Greater Latrobe Partners in Education Foundation is sponsoring a Latrobe Chamber Mixer, and all of board members are certainly welcome to attend. It will be at the Nunzio's. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Any other business to come before the board? If not, then I'm adjourned. Thank you so much for your time.